Right, hello everyone. Is the mic working? Yeah. God, yeah. Right. For the benefit of people watching on playback, I'll get to the point about what I was going to be talking about. This is the second part of a two-part stream, where I was going to talk about Altamont and Susan Atkins' grand jury testimony, and I was going to talk about the two things in conjunction with each other because I did a stream about Mae Brussels' essay that she wrote about Operation Chaos. And at the end of that, she points out that it's kind of suspicious that there was a big operation to disrupt the counterculture, and Altamont and the Manson murders happen really close to each other. So I thought I'd do a stream where we talked about Altamont. I did that last week. And like this week, I was going to read out part of the Manson File. And I'm still going to read out part of it, what I was going to read out, but not all of it. Because basically, so yeah, I was going to read out something about from the Manson File. I mean, we're going to talk about Susan's grand jury testimony because that actually happened the day before Altamont. So it was being reported on the day of Altamont, so it would have been fresh in people's minds. And like literally about 2 hours before the stream, I thought, right, I'll go to Susan's grand jury testimony and I'll try and find the two really bad bits that everyone knows about, which are supposed to be so horrific, which is where she says at one point she's left alone with Sharon Tate, and Sharon Tate's saying, oh, let me live. Please let me live. I just want to have my baby. And Susan apparently says, what is it? I have no mercy for you, lady. You're going to die tonight, and so's your baby. And she's alone with Sharon when she says that. And then we're also told that she said, she said, I stabbed Sharon Tate and I licked the blood off the knife. And I said, this is a trip. I thought this is a trip sort of thing. Yeah. So that's like, these are the two horrible things she's supposed to have said, right? So I go to a grand jury testimony. Oh, no. There we go. This is her walking into a grand jury testimony, and I went and read it, right? And she does not say either of those things, right? This is what she actually says. So, did you do anything to Sharon Tate at that point, right? And everyone is still in the room at this point. I'm not going to read out the whole thing, but I'll make sure it's linked below so you can read it. Everyone is still in the room. She says, Sebring's dead or dying on the floor. Frykowski's and Tex are fighting, and Krenwinkel's fighting with Abigail, and she's standing opposite Sharon, and she says this. I went over and grabbed her by the hand and put my arm around her neck. She looked at me and begged me to have her sit down, and I was told before we even got there, no matter what they beg, don't give them any leeway. Anyway, I went over and put her down on the couch and looked into her face, knowing that anything that I would say, I was saying to myself, in a sense, reassuring myself. I looked at her and said, woman, I have no mercy for you. And I knew at that point I was talking to myself, not her, which is very different to this like really horrible speech. Because recently I've got a guest staying with me, and we watched a couple of Manson documentaries, and we're told in these documentaries that she says something really vicious and she's alone in the room with her, but that's not what she actually said at all. But then the other thing that really shocked me was, right, when it comes to talking about stabbing Sharon, she actually said, did Tex do anything to Sharon at this point? Tex told me to kill her, to kill Sharon. Yes, and I couldn't. I just, in order to make a diversion so that Tex couldn't see that I couldn't kill her, I grabbed her hand and held her arms, and then I saw Tex stab her in the heart area, around the chest. Right? She never said she was alone with Tate, and she actually says she didn't stab Tate. Right? That's what she actually said in court. Right? And I thought, well, this can't get any crazier, can it? Right? So I go and I message someone who would know about all this stuff. And I said, right, she didn't say that in her grand jury testimony. Did she testify again in court? And they're busy. They can't talk to me right now. So I had to go to the trial transcripts myself and find them. And yes, there's a couple of other times that she talks in court, right? And it's during the penalty phase she talks. And so I thought, oh, it's got to be in here, right? It's got to be in the penalty phase. She says all this shit about she threatened Sharon Tate and she licked the blood off the knife and all that. And I goes and reads it. But no, she doesn't say that at all, right? Again, she starts to say she can't remember anything. Yeah, and this is where it really... Go get it on the screen, sorry. Says, okay, now let's go back into the house again. Do you remember any other details in the house? No, not for sure details. In other words, you don't know what actually happened in the house. Is that correct? Well, you've got your pictures. You've got the scene after I left the house. I'm not talking about the pictures and the scene. I want to know what you know. I'm telling you what I know. I'm telling you what I know. I went there with Linda and Tex and Katie, according to Linda, to get back the money that the people owed her for the dopes that they did not give her to help Bobby get a lawyer. Right. And I was there like, oh my God, what the fuck, right? No one has ever said anything about that. No one has, right? She actually says, I went there because Linda said they owed her money for dope, right? She actually said that in the penalty phase, and no one has ever commented on that. So, like, yeah, that's what blew my mind, basically. Yeah, in your face, Sam, right? Susan actually said it was drug burning. Cool. Yeah, did you see that? Yeah. Oh my God. And I can't believe that. I can't believe that no one else has ever noticed that and actually said anything about it before. So yeah, that blew my mind because I was just trying to find this bit in the jury testimony. But no, in court, in her, I don't know what she says in books. I reckon it probably comes from Killing Sharon Tate, stuff she said in private interviews where she was just chatting, you know. But when she was actually in court, she denies remembering much about being in the house, and she actually says she didn't stab Sharon Tate in court. That's what she actually said in court. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, because this is why we've got to read the trial transcripts. I want to go and read all the penalty phase now because loads of them talk. Squeaky speaks. Because in Helter Skelter, he mentions that I think it's Cappy says something about it during the penalty phase. But I want to go and read it now because I bet they all just spill it in the penalty phase. Well, Leslie doesn't because it was the trial transcripts blew my mind last time I went to read them because that Leslie stream I was going to do. I was just looking for an easy comparison between a testimony at two different trials, and it blew, again, it was crazy. And that was when I found out that she had said she was at Hinman's house when she wasn't at Hinman's house. And it's like, why the hell would you do that? So yeah, this is why we have to read the trial transcripts, right? Because I can't believe Susan Atkins said that. So I now want to see what they all said. And this is during the penalty phase, so it doesn't actually matter at the penalty phase, does it? So that's the kicker. But I can't believe no one else has ever noticed that she said that, right? It's volume 77, I think. If you go to the trial transcripts, it's the first one where she speaks during the penalty phase. Page on cielodrive.com, page 99. Yeah, and when she's talking about what she actually did, she starts saying she can't remember much. She can remember walking in, and she can remember writing on the door, and she can remember throwing the towel back into the thing, and she can remember leaving. That's basically all she actually says. I couldn't believe that, though. She actually said that in court. I'll show you again. Exactly what she said. I'm telling you what I know. I'm telling you what I know. I went there with Linda and Tex and Katie, according to Linda, to get back the money that the people owed her for the dope that they did not give her to help get Bobby a lawyer. And again, during the penalty phase, so not actually admissible, doesn't make any difference. But fucking hell, I just can't believe that she actually said that and no one else has commented. And she apparently, so I reckon all this stuff about her saying she licked the blood off the knife and all that must have come from these private interviews, mustn't it? And so it must be written in the book. I haven't read that yet, but that is on archive.org as well, The Killing of Sharon Tate. And what I am going to read you from the Manson File, we'll talk about the lawyer that organised all the killing of Sharon Tate being written in the grand jury testimony, because that's mind blowing as well. Yeah, who the lawyers are connected to, just goes to show it's all crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Meth LSD and scopolamine, the Susan Atkins diet. Yeah. Yeah, what are the reasons? Yeah, well, the drugs, can cause bloody hell. I could do numerous videos telling you the effects of the amount of drug abuse these people were committing as well, because people, when I'm talking to people in groups, people don't seem to understand the difference between use and abuse of drugs, and that what these people were doing is more extreme than whatever they did when they were teenagers, But yeah, no, it can cause you to black out. Drugs can cause you to black out. Trauma can cause you to black out. So yeah, she really might have just blacked it out. Some people can black out trauma, apparently, yeah. You disassociate. Not everyone, but some people can. So it's possible, yeah, that she was having blackouts because the drug use, or blackouts because it's so horrible she don't want to remember it. But yeah, I couldn't believe that as well, because we've been led to believe all these years that she actually said that in court when she didn't. I bet she just said that to someone who was writing a book or whatever, and that's been written. But no, she didn't actually say that. Right, sorry, just looking at the chat for a minute, and I'll get into what I was going to read from the Manson File now. But yeah, like I say, that blew my mind right before I was going to start the stream. I was just looking for the nasty bits from her grand jury testimony, and I find that she didn't actually say that. Actually, they've made that up. And then when I do look for what she said in court, she says that the motive was, Linda said the guys hadn't given her the dope, so they had to go up there to get the money to get a lawyer for Bobby. So it is save a brother and MDA are the motives. So it's drug burn and save a brother. There you go. But that's it, yeah. But who believes fucking anything Susan Atkins says? But yeah, no, that helps confirm it for me further. Because she seems to freak out and start wanting to tell the truth as well. If we I won't go over her whole bloody testimony, but she says she wants to tell the truth and she knows she lied before. Yeah, that was the other thing. It was a story. I know I said I stabbed someone before and it was a story. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. She wasn't a Mensa member before meeting the family anyway, and had a ton of chemicals to that Abbey brain, and you get a rambly shit suit. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's it. I think she said a lot of things, yeah, to keep other inmates away from her, because she was a small woman and she was scared. Possibly, but then there's other accounts that say she was the aggressive lesbian, and that actually she wasn't scared, like. So who knows? In reality, what actually went on. Right, yeah, and so I was going to start reading out about her lawyers. Wait a second, let me get... So I was going to read out more of the Manson File tonight, but just because that was going to take up a few minutes at the beginning, I'm not going to have time now, because it's a lot to read out. And I will read out the rest of this chapter just on another night. But this is Caballero. And he shows up out of nowhere, as I'm going to get to in a second. Just give me a minute. Oh, I needed a drink after that. God. Yeah. Well, where does she say that then? Because I just went and read what she said, right? And she didn't say that, right? She actually starts getting really vague. She starts denying it, right? When she's actually in front of the fucking jury, she denies it. The only time she says all that sort of shit is when she's talking to someone who's writing a book, right? When she was actually in front of a jury. This was all blew my mind. I couldn't believe it as I was reading it. I was thinking, what? No, she didn't say that at all. Yeah. Yeah, she was a convict before she met Charles Manson. She was already shoplifting. If you read her own book, the book she wrote, she tells you she was shoplifting when she was a teenager. She was a compulsive, Or what they would have said, she was a compulsive criminal in the fucking past. But no, they don't say that. They don't describe you like that anymore. But yeah, but they would say, yeah, she was showing criminal behavior from a young age before she met Charles Manson. And she wasn't innocent at all. Yeah. But like I say, I was surprised that actually during the grand jury testimony, she doesn't say that at all. Yeah, it's probably, I bet, yeah, if you read, yeah, because that her, Ronnie Hughes' testimony, or whatever the fuck she's called. She says all that sort of stuff, don't she? And she talks about shagging a man and he blows his brains out while he's having sex with her, and she's really turned on. She drinks his blood after he's, oh God, and all that shit. Yeah, she said all that while she, but some of that. No, I'm not going to get to that part now. I'm only going to read out the lawyer's part tonight. But yeah, I'll start reading from the Manson File anyway. Yeah, the chapter's called Making a Killing, Sadie's Story and the Schiller Scam. And it's page 353. Told in the words of a pretty 21-year-old who calmly confessed to the most hideous crime of the century from the cover of The Killing of Sharon Tate. It's just a quote at the beginning of the chapter. What's been lost in the confusion surrounding the Manson phenomenon is how decisive a role the extravagant stories of Susan Atkins, we are told, that she squealed in jail in early November of 1969 really played in the entire future development of the cause and legend it inspired. If the Manson myth has a mother, it's Sexy Sadie. Without her original confession, Bugliosi would have had no case, as he later admitted. And because that tale was sanctioned by a docile, unquestioning media within weeks of her indictment as a true story, almost all of the stories spun from it, including all tales told by her fellow defendants, Watson, Kasabian, and Krenwinkel, were obliged to more or less stick to the general outline of the Atkins account. Of course, to paraphrase the Beatles she so adored, Atkins' narrative was polished with more than a little help from her friends, if lawyers can be considered friends. The Manson myth's formulations began when Atkins, identifying herself as Donna Powell, was picked up by the police at the Barker Ranch on October the 9th, 1969, with her infant child, Zizo Sadfrak. Originally, Atkins was only suspected of having some possible involvement with auto theft. On October the 12th, the day of Manson's arrest, young Kitty Lutzinger, Bobby Beausoleil's pregnant girlfriend, was discovered by the police not far from the Barker Ranch. She requested law enforcement protection, claiming that she was in danger from the others in the nomadic tribe she'd been staying with. Lutzinger never felt fully trusted by the Manson circle, and she agreed to talk to detectives about her knowledge of the other crimes committed by the hippie car thieves being rounded up in the area. 2 Los Angeles homicide detectives investigating the Hinman murder since July had been looking for Lutzinger ever since they learned of her relationship with Beausoleil. When they heard that she'd surfaced, they came to interview her in the small desert town of Independence in Inyo County. In the course of telling the cops what she'd heard from the others about the Hinman murder, a since discredited tale, placing all the blame for Beausoleil's deed on Manson, Kitty mentioned that Susan Atkins had been present at the crime scene during the killings. Lutzinger, it should be recalled, had personal reasons to shift blame from Beausoleil to Manson, since she was primarily Beausoleil's girlfriend. The next day, Atkins, held in the small Independence jail, was questioned. She admitted that she was there when Beausoleil stabbed her friend Hinman. She was arrested for murder and sent to Sybil Brand Women's Detention Institute in LA. While all this was going on, police were questioning the still unindicted Leslie Van Houten, who they also had in their custody, about a tip that she had revealed in her knowledge about the Cielo Waverly murders to some others. In the course of this first questioning, Leslie said without any ambiguity that Charlie wasn't in on those. This statement was made before the Atkins confession, and the bizarre defense strategy arising is that is the source of the Manson myth. Van Houten, whose links to the Manson circle was never very deep and was also primarily one of Bobby's harem, came very close to testifying against her accomplices in exchange for immunity. It appears that Van Houten was leaning in the direction of telling something more in line with the truth about the crimes than Charlie as a mastermind story Atkins had concocted. In fact, Van Houten, despite her seeming loyalty to Manson and the other defendants in court, wavered back and forth even well into the trial. She was on the verge of cooperating with the prosecution immediately before the death of her attorney, Ronald Hughes, which made her think better of it. The conspiracy to cover up the real background of the crimes was always extremely fragile. It was in danger of being exposed until the very moment the verdicts were delivered in the courtroom. Had it been Van Houten rather than Atkins who broke the case in November 1969, it's unlikely that the cover story of of Manson ordering Helter Skelter could have been devised. While Lulu vacillated, human nature prevailed. Sadie Mae Glutz seized the first opportunity to save her own skin that she could find. What happened next can be interpreted, if you like, as an extraordinary amount of faith. Sorry, I've lost my place. The book got awkward. What happened next can be interpreted, if you like, as an incredible chain of coincidences, but only if you're endowed with an extraordinary amount of faith in the essential goodness of mankind and the ethics of the legal profession, and the complete ignorance of the influence of organised crime has always had exerted in the US justice system. If Atkins was found guilty of involvement in the Hinman killing, she faced the death penalty, according to the California law of conspiracy. She was destitute and had no family to help her with legal costs. And yet, through some unknown connection that remains obscure to this day, her court-appointed attorney, Gerald Condon, was dismissed from the case, and the dirt poor Sexy Sadie immediately obtained the public defender services of Richard Caballero, a high-priced attorney with some very intriguing connections. He promised Atkins that if she cooperated, he could make a deal with the prosecutor that would win her a reduced sentence. While Caballero was the public face of the Atkins original defense team, a much more experienced and better-known attorney was the real brains behind the legal strategy. Caballero's associate was Paul Caruso, one of the most expensive and prominent lawyers in California. Why would someone of Caruso's stature become involved as a public defender for the unknown hippie Atkins, who couldn't have even dreamed of paying him his usual exorbitant rate? As you will recall from the last chapter, Caruso was not only renowned for his unstinting service to the Italian American community, but also for his proven competency defending of some of the group's shadier underworld business partners, especially clients in the narcotics trade. We need only refer to 4 of the defendants he served in 1969 alone to see how remarkable it is that Paul Caruso should happen to be one of the many attorneys helping out with Susan Atkins' defense, supposedly before her involvement with the Tate murder was known. To refresh your memory, among Caruso's other young clients in the same dope-dealing demimonde which Atkins and her accomplices moved in was Tommy Harrigan. The drug dealer Harrigan, we recall, had visited Sebring and Frykowski at Cielo Drive on the day before their murders to arrange for an MDA delivery. It was Harrigan who heard Frykowski's claim that he would die young and violently. Harrigan, as detailed in Chapter 5, was part of Billy Doyle's dope-dealing clique, and a frequent guest at the same Mama Cass drug parties at Woodstock Road that Susan Atkins and Tex Watson attended. Also involved in the small world of the Doyle, Harrigan, Reinhardt, Dawson drug circle was a major cocaine dealer named Charles Tackott, along with Billy Doyle. Tackott's name appeared in the Los Angeles Times as a Cielo Drive murder suspect immediately after the story broke, when Charles Tackott lost a potential job with NBC because they didn't wish to be associated with a murder suspect. Tackott hired Paul Caruso as his lawyer. Caruso filed a suit against the Los Angeles Times, accusing the paper of damaging his drug dealer client's reputation by connecting him to the Cielo Drive murder. And it's in this regard that Caruso's name comes up in connection with Cielo Drive at an early point in the investigation. Tate homicide investigator Lieutenant Earl Deemer interviewed Tackott's friend and fellow suspect Billy Reinhardt at Parker Center on 30th of September 1969. Reinhardt made it clear that he knew Paul Caruso well. Reinhardt found it so peculiar that Caruso, a Los Angeles Times legal representative, was suing the paper he worked for on behalf of Tackott that he mentions it several times to Deemer. Charles Tackott is suing the Los Angeles Times. Caruso told one of his clients that Charles turned in everybody's name as a Cielo Drive murder suspect, which made this guy go to Charles and pounce on him and say, "I'm going to do you in because you turned in all of our friends' names, you know." And it seems kind of weird that Paul Caruso is the attorney for the Los Angeles Times too. Later in the interview, Reinhardt says, "Now Charles has a suit against the LA Times, and Caruso is the lawyer for the LA Times, you know." What I mean, a lot of weird things like that have come down, and I don't understand really. The lawyer's role in this episode is indeed kind of weird, especially when we consider that 3 months later, Caruso would broker the deal to the phony Atkins confession as an exclusive to his clients, the Los Angeles Times, and The Killing of Sharon Tate, a book made from those articles, was published by the New American Library, subsidiary for the Times. During the September 1969 interview, Billy Reinhardt also told Deemer that Caruso was well versed on details of the Cielo Drive crime scene and that the police had not yet released. This is from Caruso that they had already found fingerprints and footprints at the murder site and that the gun was a small caliber gun. Susan Atkins had not ever been arrested yet at this juncture. Why, a month after the murders, did her future lawyers have an interest in the inside knowledge of the crime his future client would be charged with? Again, it must be emphasized that the lawyer helping to prepare Atkins' defense was not only directly involved with at least 2 of the original Cielo Drive suspects, and the newspaper most responsible for providing the public with false information on the crime. Among the many mob clients Caruso represented was Eugene Massaro, whose sidekick Joel Rosdale's presence at Cielo Drive the night before the murders was of course one of the main factors the cover-up sought to conceal. This list of clients is incriminating enough, but when we consider that Atkins' original statement, the first tentative trickle of the flood of bullshit that would soon become Bugliosi's helter-skelter, was made while she was being represented by Paul Caruso, it becomes almost impossible to believe that his placement on her defense team is just an amazing manifestation of chance. Richard Caballero was the public face of her original defense team, but Caruso's well-documented presence at several of Caballero-Atkins conferences makes it clear that the better-connected attorney for the mob consistently provided counsel on her case. This was the same strategy her old friend Sidney Korshak utilised when guiding the legal strategy of his own underworld clients. Korshak discreetly directed the defense for his crook clients from behind the scenes, allowing attorneys less openly connected to the mob to be the frontmen for his operations. Considering what we know of the jetlag Polanski, Gutowski, Evans damage control meeting with the fixer Korshak at Paramount Studios one day after the Cielo Drive murders, it's not too far-fetched to suspect that like a Russian Matryoshka doll's many layers of nested dolls of diminishing size placed within another, just as Caruso stood behind Caballero, so did Korshak stand behind Caruso. We will never know which higher-up of the mob's Hollywood drug dealer chain of command decided that Atkin should be given the order to confess by telling a story which conveniently deleted all of the details the Mafia wanted to keep from public scrutiny. Many years later, Atkins only spoke vaguely of being given a tip shortly after arriving in Los Angeles from Death Valley that the word was that the cops knew she was involved with the Cielo Drive slaughter. If she wanted a deal to avoid the gas chamber, this as yet unidentified advisor assured her something could be arranged. The mob's elaborate system of buffers and cutouts is designed to prevent just such knowledge from becoming known to its pawns. In the vulnerable legal situation Atkins was in, little persuasion would have been needed to convince her that this was an offer she couldn't refuse. Of all of Caruso's many top-tier mob clients, it was obviously Joel Rossdale who had most to lose if the true events of Cielo Drive came out. When Rossdale was freed on bail after being shot during the failed Watson dope robbery in April '69, he'd relied on Caruso's legal services to keep him out of court. When the police interviewed Rossdale about Charlene McCaffrey's claimed that her former boyfriend had dropped off a major drug delivery at Cielo Drive hours before the murders, Caruso gave him advice on how to answer any further questions. It's possible that Caruso knew about Watson's drug burglary MO. 7 months before he miraculously ended up on Sexy Sadie's legal team. The Rossdale publicly represented Rossdale's partner in crime, Gino Massaro, in 1968 in his very Cielo-like drug-related home invasion charge, adds even more suspicion to Caruso's defense of Atkins. Gerard Katina, the head of the Genovese family, who the Boyardos and Joel Rossdale ultimately answered to, had already mounted his own private investigation into the death of Sebring and the La Biancas. Katina wanted to know who was killing off his West Coast connections, and he was more than a little curious about the huge amount of drugs that had been stolen from his LA distributors. The Genovese family maintained 1,000 eyes and ears throughout the federal prison system, including quite a few law enforcement officials in the mob's payroll. In many ways, the syndicate's intelligence operation was more effective than anything the police could arrange. So it isn't at all unlikely that the first jailhouse whispers about Atkins involved in the Tate LaBianca murders could have reached the Genovese family before they were relayed to the authorities. Right. Wow. So, because there's a lot to unpack there, I did a diagram. There we go. Right, so... Right, so Susan Atkins, her original lawyer is called Gerald Condon. Can't even find a picture of him. He's nobody. He's just the public defender she was given. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, he's dismissed, and she gets Richard Caballero who's like the one who's walking into court with her that you see at the grand jury. But behind him, there's this guy, Paul Caruso, and if you've watched my channel, I've done several streams about Harrigan and Doyle and everything that's in the police report about Harrigan and Doyle and Charles Tackott and Billy Doyle, and they're all mentioned in Chaos, if you've read Chaos, so you'll all have heard these names. Right, and Paul Caruso, he represented Tommy Harrigan, and he helped Tackott sue the LA Times, even though he is the LA Times legal representative, and he's the one who brokers the deal for Susan's confession in the LA Times and the book, The Killing of Sharon Tate, getting written, basically. So yeah, that's the crazy thing about Susan's lawyers. And there's loads more to this chapter, but because that first bit that I found when I went to look at her grand jury testimony became such a... Oh, and for the after stream as well, I'll do something fun. I just suddenly thought of that. If you're hanging around, because it's the anniversary of Bobby getting arrested, apparently. That's all Paul had posted. So yeah, for that. And yeah, if it turns out to be funny, I might clip it and put it on the channel. Because I don't normally leave the after streams up, do I? Yeah, but hang around for the after stream. Because we watched a film the other night. My friend who's visiting. And as I was watching it, I was thinking, oh my god, I bet my chat would have some funny comments if we was watching this. I was like, yeah, we'll watch this film together later. And if it does turn out to be funny, I will clip it and I'll put it on the channel. Oh, sorry, yeah, let me look at the chat. But yeah, that's a lot to digest, so I drew a diagram, right? Yeah, and there's so much I couldn't get it all to go in one line under him. That's all just under Paul Caruso. None of that's to do with it. Yeah. He also represents Tommy Harrigan. Oh, and all the Rostow and Massaro stuff as well. But a lot of people are cynical about that. So I didn't see it. But he also represents Rostow. In case people don't know about that, Rostow was a guy who was robbed, and Tex was never arrested for it and convicted of it and shit. But it looks like it was possibly Tex Watson, an early drug robbery by Tex Watson, and he shot the guy in the foot. He tied them up and stole their drugs, and then as he left, shot him in the foot. And as I just read out there, that's the crazy stuff. And yeah, how did they know Susan Atkins was involved even, before Susan Atkins was even arrested? Oh yeah, and I found a brilliant obituary for Paul Caruso as well that talks about all the famous cases he is. He's a really famous lawyer. In fact, I might even get that up on the screen in a bit because it's interesting. Because yeah, he was famous for representing boxers and all sorts. He was a very, very famous lawyer, and so it is very suspicious that who paid for Susan Atkins to have these guys. It's very interesting. Where did she get that money from? Because from what I've looked into, yeah, Leslie, maybe her family could afford to get her a lawyer. Krenwinkel, believe it or not, actually, though, her dad bailed her out initially. So not all of them, but Susan Atkins, no, there was no one who could afford to pay for this. Who would pay for this for Susan Atkins, except the mob themselves to cover up shit, Sorry, just get the chat for a sec. Yeah, and I'm sure it's in Helter Skelter, because in Helter Skelter, he mentions one of the girls at the sentencing phase. No, the bit, what do you call it? Sorry. Oh god, I needed a drink when I read that, so I'm half bloody shit faced before I even started the stream. The sentencing phase when it doesn't mean anything. He said that it was Cappy that said it. But I can't believe Susan said it as well. So now I'm going to go through and read what they all said, because they're all squeaky speaks. I want to see what they all said, because I bet they all actually allude to it. Susan Atkins blew my mind from beyond the grave. Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, it does seem very mob, doesn't it? It's like all the people clubbed together to pay these guys to keep their names out of it, and to. Well, why wouldn't they do it for everyone? Because they only needed one of them to put out this false shit, and the rest of them would all go along with it to try and get the reduced sentence, because they all basically went along with, oh, we only did it because Charles Manson brainwashed us, didn't they? You know what I mean? And so they only needed one of them. They didn't need all of them to do it. They only needed one, didn't they? And once she's done her grand jury testimony, all of them have heard the story they're meant to be telling, and that's what they all do from now on. Yeah, why Susan of all people? I think because she looks so cute or whatever. Maybe they thought, yeah, people would warm to her more or believe her more or something or whatever. It actually had the opposite effect, didn't it? Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought as well. That was the other reason I thought, why would these high-profile lawyers want? Because this case was so high-profile, they would just want the notoriety. That's what I thought as well. Maybe that's one banal explanation, one other, not. But it is kind of weird, isn't it? Yeah. Where does Susan suddenly get these lawyers from? And this Paul Caruso has also represented Harrigan, and he helped Tackott sue the LA Times, so he obviously knows everyone who was involved with the situation. It's just crazy, isn't it? I know. Wheels within wheels. This case just gets crazier and crazier. And I just wanted to go to a grand jury testimony and find these nasty bits that she's supposed to have said, and it fucking bent my mind completely. It's just like, what? No, she never said that. Where does it say she said that? Holy shit. She didn't say that. Yeah, I couldn't believe that in her grand jury testimony, she actually says, I didn't stab her. And I made evasive action so that Tex couldn't see I couldn't stab her, and then Tex stabbed her. But she actually says she didn't stab Sharon Tate in her grand jury testimony. And later, in the bit that I've read more of you from, she says, yeah, I can't. Well, she just says she can't remember much, basically. Yeah, she says all she can remember is the going in and the going out and the writing on the door and the throwing in the towel, and that's all she can remember, basically, is what she says. But there's a bloody whole, like I say, we've got to read the rest of the fucking transcript now because there's another whole bit. So maybe she does say something like that in the next bit. I was just like, yeah, well, an hour before the show, I'm suddenly reading Susan Atkins said, yeah, oh no, we went up there because Linda said that they owed her $2,000 for this dope. And we wanted to get a lawyer for Bobby. I was like, what? My God. Oh, dear. So, yeah, this stream took a very different turn. Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have got drunk, but like I say, I just couldn't believe that. That blew my mind that Susan said that in court and no one's ever mentioned it. So let's just get the chat for a second. I haven't missed anything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it's in Helter Skelter because I was surprised to read in Helter Skelter that Bugliosi mentions that at the sentencing phase, people were mentioning it, drug burn thing, that they'd heard it was to do with Linda getting ripped off or something. But then Susan said it. Susan actually said it. So what? What you doing to me, Susan? Yeah, she mentioned drug burn from the start. Yeah, she said it, and she actually said I didn't stab Sharon Tate from the start. When she was in court, right? Maybe when she's sitting writing an interview for a magazine or for a book, she'd sit there and go, "Oh yeah, I stabbed her in that." Or when she sat in prison chatting to other prisoners, she'll say it. But when she was actually sat in front of a jury, she said, "No, I didn't stab her. I couldn't do it." Yeah, she said it in interviews. That's the thing. She does say it in interviews, right? But no, when she was actually in front of the jury, she doesn't say it. Yeah, I've heard this as well. There's a rumor that, well, I don't know if Roman Polanski was there, but I've heard a rumor that Linda was up at the house before. But Roman Polanski was away a lot of the time, wasn't he? He was in London at the time. He was making films in London and shagging other women behind Sharon's back, apparently, they say. But yeah, I've heard that Linda was up at the house before. That's a rumor everyone knows. Hello, everyone. Yeah, like I say, it shouldn't take me long to edit this because I've got a decent internet connection now. So my internet shouldn't go down. So this should be able for replay quite quickly. Yeah, I hope so. Did that sound clear when I read the Manson File? I hope I don't have to do that again because I was drunk. But no, that just blew my mind. I needed a drink before the stream. So what? Susan Atkins, you didn't just say that 50 years ago. Fucking more than 50 years ago. Sweet Jesus, 1969. That's what? 22 years before I was even born. And she's blowing my mind. Well, Rudy Outerbelly seemed quite proud of it, didn't he? As well, that's the sick thing. Apparently he kept the bloodstains in the carpet and used to show the guests and that. Oh, did you see that tweet from James Woods? Someone shared it, and I think in the podcast group, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, James Woods had tweeted that Outerbelly was his manager. And he said it was weird. He visited him at CLO Drive, basically. Huh? Oh yeah, and he'd admitted he had said that he was listening to Chaos, the audio version of Chaos, hadn't he? Yeah, James Woods is cool though, isn't he? He's the kind of guy who would be interested in this sort of shit. I tweeted at him, I said, you listen to the audio version of the Manson File. Loads of good shit about Rudy Outerbelly in there. Yeah, well, Roman have Linda up at the house. Yeah, this is the thing, because this is the thing, it was Frykowski and possibly Folger who were the drug dealers, not Roman. Well, he was shipping back probably speed pills. We can only speculate in it. Oh, Mark, you've only just shown up, haven't you? I'll show it again. Susan said this during the sentencing phase. She says, I'm telling you what I know, I'm telling you what I know. I went there with Linda and Tex and Katie, according to Linda, to get back the money that the people owed her for the dope that they did not give her to help get Bobby a lawyer. So actually, at the trial, Susan said that the reason she went up there was because Linda told her they owed $2,000 and they wanted the money back for Bobby's lawyer. And no one has ever mentioned it. Yeah. Not sure if I actually think Bobby. Well, his drug use doesn't seem to have been as heavy as the others. He didn't hang around the ranch as much as well. Because as I was reading through the trial transcript as well, they're talking about it. They're talking about the fact Bobby was always coming to the ranch, then going back to Hollywood. So Bobby wasn't constantly at the ranch. So he might not have been quite as brain fried on the drugs as the others were. And why doesn't he say something? Well, because fucking he can't change his story now, can he? None of them can change their story at this point. They admit that they've lied all these years. Their rehabilitation is in doubt, isn't it? Mm. You're saying all this about Roman Polanski. Now, the rumor is it was Jay Sebring and Frykowski who used to pick up young men from the strip. That's the rumor. Saying this about Polanski didn't actually spend much time, did he? And then after the murders, he didn't want to go back to America because he was worried he was the target. And Jack Nicholson had to talk him into coming back to America to shoot Chinatown. And then he raped the 13-year-old, so now he can't go back to America again. You know, if I can say Roman Polanski wasn't actually at CLA Drive that much, really. It was all Frykowski and Sebring and Tate that was at the CLA Drive. Hmm. There's a film starting right now, The Worst Person in the World. Is it relevant? Which one of these people is the worst in the world that we're talking about? Sweet Jesus. Not Charles Manson. That's the most disturbing thing. Yeah, because we're told, the worst person in the world in this case is Charles Manson. But fucking hell, actually, had very little to do with the poor bastard. He was just sat there going, holy shit, what are you going to do next, kids? Yeah, stuff about Linda bragging about it. And she was at Harold True's before she met the Manson family as well, wasn't she? Yeah, so she was in the area. So yeah, it's not impossible that because Polanski did come back and there was a party at the house while Polanski was there, because that's in the police report. Because it's then that Dawson and Doyle are at the house and they stand on someone's foot and kick off, and Polanski has them kicked out. So that's why they're suspects, because they got kicked out of a party at the house, and they threatened as they left. They made some kind of threat as they left. But I think it was Pick Dawson and Billy Doyle. So Polanski was at some points at CLA Drive. Yeah. Well, how he met Polanski met Frykowski. No, fucking. He knew Frykowski from from the past in Poland. Yeah, are you talking about Frykowski? Polanski knew Frykowski from the past from Poland. He didn't meet him in America. Frykowski's dad funded one of Roman Polanski's early films. That must be why he felt indebted to Frykowski and why he wouldn't kick Frykowski out and why he was letting Frykowski hang around, because he felt Frykowski used to make him feel guilty, basically. Because Frykowski's dad funded one of Roman Polanski's early films or some shit like that. That is the connection between Frykowski and Polanski. Oh, so did you mean she? Did you mean she? Yeah, sorry. No, I thought you were saying you thought no. He didn't mean Frykowski in America. He knew Frykowski from the past. She met Frykowski, maybe. Yeah, but it's more possible that she was at a party while it was just Frykowski there. Because Roman didn't spend a lot of time at Cielo Drive. He went back to London, didn't he? Because he was making a film in London this whole time. And he was shipping back these trunks to Cielo Drive, but he didn't go to Cielo Drive that much at this point. Yeah, yeah. Just got to show this little. James never found that Linda that good looking. But Linda said the same about James. Yeah. So, yeah, yeah. Bitch. No, but that's the crazy thing when you read all the Yana the Witch stuff. It sounds like all the blokes went crazy over her. Tex obviously really liked her, and the guy who wrote the Yana the Witch essay, he obviously found her fascinating, didn't he? And he didn't take it seriously. He didn't realize he needed to take it seriously when she said shit like, "I've decided not to kill you." He thought she was just being edgy. Didn't realize that like only a fucking week before she was. Yeah, yeah, they met in film school in Poland. Yeah, that's where Frykowski met him. And Frykowski's dad was a rich dude. He was from a rich family, and he funded one of Polanski's films. That's how they knew each other, and that is probably why Roman was not kicking Frykowski out, because no one fucking can understand why he was letting his wife live with this fucking loser. You know, because he was fucking. He never managed to achieve anything for himself. He was a wannabe actor, I think, wasn't he? He was trying to be an actor. Yeah. Yeah. Linda's too old for Roman. Sorry. Yeah, oh fucking hell no, Capone had said that. I honestly didn't read you had said that. I thought of that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is why Linda. Oh god. You think Cappy was the best looking of them all? Cappy was the best looking. I'm always really mean about their looks, but I'm just being a bitch. People don't understand. British people are mean. We're just mean like those. It's a joke. It's hard to explain. I don't know, but I think out of all of them, Leslie was the one that looked like more like a model. Was the most conventionally beautiful one of them all, I think. Yeah, they're all attractive from beyond smell range. Yeah. But no, they all have their own individual beauty, don't they? They're all beautiful. But I think out of all of my, well, in my opinion, whatever that's worth, I think Leslie was the most attractive looking. Sorry, just staring at the chat. Yeah, this is it. He has to have been, and we've got the FBI report saying it's shipped from his name to Frykowski's name at Cielo, and it only says dangerous drugs, and it's probably speed pills because it was easier to get the speed pills in London and ship them back. So well, it still is nowadays in England. In Harley Street, we have a place called Harley Street in London, and if you're rich enough, you can go there, and everyone knows it, and you can find a doctor that will prescribe you anything, basically, and you just got to be rich enough. And yeah, so he was probably Roman Polanski probably had a thing going where he was sending loads of different actresses to go around all the different doctors and get the speed pills, and then they were shipping back large amounts of speed pills. But we can only speculate. We just know it was dangerous drugs, and it was easier to get ephedrine pills in London than it was in America. Yeah, well, the bloody hell, she was the Ruth Ann. That's the one who seems to have been the worst, abused by older men. Probably saying, yeah, she was very pretty, but fucking hell. Too young to have been subjected to what she was. And Wish, which one's Wish? What's Wish's real name again? I'm too drunk. Yeah, Brandy, yeah, I needed a Brandy after I read that Susan actually admitted it was bloody drug burning to save her brother at the sentencing phase of the trial. And we haven't noticed. This is just an audio of Sebring's attorney's son. He said the Cielo residents and Jay were at Jay's house the night before the murder. And it's in chaos, isn't it? That the night before the murder, suddenly Jay Sebring's cable TV went out, and so they went, "Oh, this is weird," and they left, and they went to Cielo Drive, and they found out later that someone had accidentally cut his cable TV. It's like they were trying to cut the phone lines, but they cut his cable TV. Yeah, but yeah, that's in chaos. That they were all actually at Jay's house, but then Jay's cable TV went down. And they weren't concerned. They just thought that had gone down. But then after the murders, when the police investigated Jay's house, they found that wires had been cut, and they'd probably been trying to cut the phone lines, and they mistakenly cut the cable TV. And Tom O'Neill talks about that on the Joe Rogan podcast as well. If you watch him, he's saying, "Well, so these people were targeted the night before." You know, there's this big thing about that, isn't there? It looks like they were being told. Yeah, what the wires had been cut at Jay Sebring's house. Yeah. Electronics he had fitted at Jay stopped working, so he called him to see if he could fix it. Yeah. And apparently in the house, all that happened was the TV stopped working or something. And they went, "Oh, this is wrong. Oh, well, let's go over yours then." And so they went over to Cielo's. But someone was actually cutting the wires, so it looks like they were trying to target them there. So something was going on. Yeah. Yeah, when you were a teenager in Germany, you could buy ephedrine and Mandrax Quaaludes over the counter without any paperwork. Mandrax is what we called it in Europe. In America, they called it Quaaludes, yeah. Yeah, and apparently, yeah, in the 60s here. Well, it's in Mama Cassie's biography. Dave Crosby talks about it, and I found this out when I was looking at it because I've always just been really interested in fucking drug history and reading books. But I found out something interesting in America. It's illegal for doctors to prescribe to addicts just because they're addicts. Something that they call harm reduction. So in America, they have to fake, like the person has to fake having a back injury to get the fentanyl or whatever. Like they can't just. But in the UK, they can prescribe you drugs to prevent you going out and stealing to get drugs. That's the logic behind it. And so, like the Americans were astounded by the fact that they can do that in the UK, and everyone's shot over here because you can get medicinal heroin in the UK. Because in the 60s, it was actually heroin they gave you. Now it's not heroin they give you, but. Sorry. Back to the wires being cut. So the night before the murder. Oh, when he was up there to pick up the suit for the funeral and check the wires. Oh, because I thought in chaos it said the police found the wires had been cut. But like after the murders, and at the time when they were in the house, they just left when the electronics started fucking up. They went, "Oh, well, this is bollocks. Let's go up yours then." And so they went to Sharon's house. Yeah. Keith Richard had a dog named Mandrax. I can believe that, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, freshly cut. They went out there and cut the wires the night before the murders. Yeah, Mandy's fucking Frank Zappa references them in songs and shit, don't he? Oh God, have you seen a guy eat? Well, fucking right. Nowadays, it's exactly the same plant. I've checked this out. Datura. It's called Datura, and it's one of the other plant names for it is Datura. And just look up bad Datura trip stories. There are millions of them. It's shocking. I'm trying to draw more attention to the fact that one of the main Manson murderer took Datura in the hope that it will put kids off trying to take Datura, but yeah, probably won't. Probably fucking drive more kids to try it. So. Yeah, no one knew they had been cut. But no, it says in chaos. Honestly, read chaos. Tom O'Neill found this out. Apparently, they were at Joe Sebring's house and the TV went down or something. Like you said, the electronics started malfunctioning, and so they left and they went to Cielo Drive. So yeah, they didn't know that the wires had been cut. They just thought, "Oh, fucking hell, the electronics are fucking up," And so they went, "Oh, we'll go to someone else's house." Yeah. So it's like, wow, what was going on? Yeah, well, Datura, well, fucking, it's a thing, because it's the nightshade family of plants. This is the other confusing thing, because in court and in the psychiatry reports and all that, they're referring to it as belladonna, but they'd actually got the wrong plant. But it's the nightshade family, they're all the same plant. But the plant that they were taking, the Datura, or the Jimson weed, is actually worse than belladonna. And scopolamine was extracted from the nightshade drug family. So scopolamine was fucking an extract of all these different drugs. Yeah. But it wasn't, they weren't just giving them pure Datura, they'd extracted something. So I don't know if they'd found a way to make it less poisonous. Because it's really easy to die taking it. That's the other thing to stress. Fucking don't try and take it, because there's no way to predict how strong it is. And you can just die. You die a horrible death with urine retention, and you're fucking tripping your balls off, and terrible. No, don't take it. Don't take it. Yeah, well, when it's done in a ritual, it's done in a different way. It's done in a very different way. You know, like they've bonded with the plant over months and months and all this sort of stuff, and they do a very small amount of it, and they know what they're doing with it. You know, you can't just go taking it. All right, there was an audio of the guy who fitted it all. Oh yeah, you have to find it. Are you in my Facebook group? Share it in the Facebook group. So that sounds interesting, because that actually that lines up nicely with something that's in Chaos. So yeah, there is another guy that is saying something about the electronics going down, because in Chaos he says something about the TV started playing up, so they went, oh well, we'll go over to CLO Drive then. Right, we've been going for an hour now, so I'm going to go over to the after stream. But yeah, and I will read out the rest of this chapter. But there is a lot to read out, and I was not looking forward to having to read it all out in one chapter anyway. But yeah, so a bit more about Susan Atkins for next week as well. But yeah, thank you for coming to this one. And yeah, it did blow a few of your minds, didn't it? Yeah, I thought most people will probably not be as mind blown by this as I am. But yeah, a few of you were, weren't you? Yeah, that's crazy. And it's at the sentencing phase, so it doesn't matter because it's not relevant to the trial. And who believes Susan Atkins anyway? But this is the crazy thing. I'm going to have to change the title of this stream now, because it was all going to be talking about how she lies in her grand jury testimony. But then she fucking tells the truth at the end. So it's like, what? Susan Atkins lies, then tells the truth? Holy shit. Yeah. There's atropine. That's the active ingredient in it. That's atropine, and you're experiencing atropine poisoning, and all the symptoms text describes. I want to do a better version of that Texas Belladonna stream, because I was really ill the night I did that, and there was no audience. It was really difficult. I can do a better version of that stream. But no, all the symptoms that Tex is describing are the symptoms of atropine poisoning. He'd OD'd horribly on the ship. Yeah, well, were you mind blown? It blew your mind as well. Yeah. Oh god, it did me. I couldn't believe it. What? Susan actually said that in court, and no one else has noticed. My god. But no, if you read the whole thing, it's like she suddenly gets a fit of conscience at the end and goes, "I have to tell the truth. I know I lied before. I said I stabbed someone, and it was a story." And she changes. Yeah. Oh god. Blue marks minge. My god. Americans, if you don't know what that is, you don't want to know, right? Don't ask. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Sorry, I was going to end this one, wasn't I? And I was going to do an after show, and we'll have some fun in the after show now. Good. Right. Excellent. Right. Thanks for coming to this one. And next week, I will read out the rest of this chapter of the Manson File, which goes further into how the testimony becomes fabricated. Excellent. Thanks for coming. I'll just address this before I go. She doesn't fucking talk at all, ever. That's just the infuriating thing about Krenwinkel. None of her police interviews have ever been made public. She doesn't talk in court. People talk on her behalf, but that's it. It's like, oh, mind-bending. She's never fucking said nothing, Krenwinkel. She just looks terrifying. Anyway, right, I'll end this now, and I'll see you for the after stream in a minute, yeah.